I'll start with the most recent, even though it, thank God, seems like so long ago. The year was 2020, and I was at home with my then 5-year-old who was online learning with his preschool teacher. It was tough, but he still does, loves Miss Rhonda, right? She's a friend of mine. We see her even still every day. We walk past her classroom as we get to school. She is, distinct looking woman. She has long blonde hair, big blue eyes, a big bright smile. And Thomas had been with her, since August, and now it's late March, early April. And they're on a preschool Zoom call, which you can imagine is kind of chaotic. And Miss Rhonda disappears for a minute and comes back with a wig on, like a short bob. Remember, she's got long blonde hair. She comes back with a wig that's like a short bob that's rainbow. And she's added some makeup, some flair. And she's doing this to keep the kids' attention. She teaches them a song about rainbows. It's great. And then, when the Zoom call ends, Thomas is like, I wonder where Miss Rhonda went. And I said, buddy, that was Miss Rhonda. And he's like, no. And so, because we love Miss Rhonda, I was able to FaceTime her, and because I could tell he was disturbed, right? And this was not a time for 5-year-olds to be upset about anything, right? We were all trying to just keep peace in our little homes. And so I FaceTimed Miss Rhonda, and sure enough, she picked up the phone. She still had the makeup on, but her wig was off. And he was like, oh, Miss Rhonda, was that you? And she was like, yes, Thomas. He didn't recognize her. Many, many, many years before then, I am 3 years old, and this is what I often say is my first core memory. It is deep in my bones. I might have actually been a little bit younger than 3, very close. I'm in my bed, my big girl bed. I remember very clearly I'd just gotten a big girl bed, which was a big deal. So I'm no longer sleeping on a low crib. I've got a bed, pillows, my loveys, and all the things. And you guys, we're talking 44 years ago. And this story has never changed for me. That is how much it affected me. Sure enough, my light comes on, and I sit up, and there's a man standing in the doorway, and he says, hey, Pooh Bear, I'm going to work. And I screamed. It was my dad, but he had shaved his beard, and I didn't recognize him. That image is the core memory. The story, the lore around it that my mom and dad still tell is that I huddled up and said, that's not my daddy, that's not my daddy. And it traumatized him. Let me tell you what, the man is 78 years old and he has not shaved his beard since. True story. It actually took a solid couple days, right? For me to feel like, okay, I was like, he sounds like my daddy, he smells like my daddy, but he didn't look anything like my dad. And I was scared. It was scary. Sometimes we are so close that we can't see the forest for the trees. Other times, we might be walking the same route, going about the same routine that we go through every day, and one little thing changes. Maybe there's a detour. Maybe there is some construction on your route. Maybe overnight, while in between walks, the house that you've always admired went from being white to being blue, right? Sometimes it doesn't even have to be a big change. A small change can really rattle us. And we forget who we are and where we are and what we're even doing. I remember in my old neighborhood, my husband and I used to live in East Lake. We would walk 3 miles every day. We would pass, the same houses every day, whatever. And one day there was a peacock, boom, with all of his glory on top of a house on our usual route. And even though we weren't really afraid of the peacock, it rattled us. We still talk about it. This is like 15 years ago. We still talk about it. We began to look for the peacock from then on out. The vision of that peacock on top of the house changed our walks forever. And every once in a while, guess what? We'd see the peacock. And that's cool. Today's story from the gospel is about the road to Emmaus, and it is a classic. The disciples are walking along, they've got a stranger with them, or at least they think it's a stranger, and he's saying all these things, and they're like, okay, but we're sad, we miss Jesus. And the stranger's like, okay. And then it comes time for a meal. And there's a loaf of bread. There's always bread, right? And as soon as Jesus takes that bread and just, breaks it, their eyes are open. Jesus had been with these guys all day long. And suddenly, it took the memory of the Last Supper, which really wasn't that long ago, for them to realize, oh my gosh, it was him the whole time. Whew. And they even said, we knew something was different. Our hearts were burning all along the way. How did we miss it? Because the thing is that as soon as he broke the bread, he was gone. As most of you know, I am a school chaplain, and I spend most of my days telling stories about Jesus to small children, grades kindergarten through 4th grade. And this week, as we talked a lot about last week's story, the gospel, or the story of Thomas, not the Gospel of Thomas, that's another thing, Google it, it's very cool. As we talked about Thomas, I said to my students, how is Jesus able to appear like this? Through locked doors, windows sealed, just appearing. More than one child, usually 1st or 2nd grade, said, maybe he's teleporting now. Like, maybe, right? We watch these really whimsical cartoons. They're only about 4 minutes long that introduce each story that we're telling. And now that Jesus has come back, he has, and you've seen this in icons, you've seen this in iconography, he has a halo, right? Not a halo that sits on top of his head like maybe an angel, right? He has a halo like this. Looks like a disc behind his head. And my students are like, why does he have that now? And I'm like, well, I think it's 2 things. One, I think when he was visiting God in heaven during those 3 days when he was dead, I think God gave it to him. And also, I think it shows us that he looks different now. He's hard to recognize. Whereas before, just a few days before, Jesus was easy to see. The route was clear. My dad had a beard, Miss Rhonda had long hair. Everything was normal. And breaking bread was breaking bread. It's what we did at meals. Suddenly now, everything is different. The entire world order has changed because God's love was stronger than death. Because the man who was put to death, because he refused to be a part of the violence and the hatred and the arrogance that ruled the day, he came back to say God's love is bigger than all that. Yes. Right? And yet, you can't recognize it. Sometimes I wish it was the other way around. Sometimes I wish that we were curious about who Jesus was before he died. Who is this man? Who is this man? I don't know who this guy is. I mean, there was some of that, but he walks in the door and everybody was like, that's Jesus, for sure. And now that he's died and come back, he walks through the door or appears as if from nowhere, and it's a question mark. The mystery of God has now expanded. Ultimately, my friends, I think this is good news. I think that it's good news that God's mystery has grown and stretched a little. I think it prepares us for the Holy Spirit that moves between us and can go anywhere. Before Jesus died, yes, he was the Son of God, but he was man, a human being. There was only one place for him to be, wherever his 2 feet landed. But part of the mystery and the awesomeness of the resurrection is now suddenly God can be everywhere all at once. Sometimes, though, we forget. Sometimes our eyes are blind. Sometimes we might come to church, be like, felt God at Holy Comforter this week, and then on Monday, forget about it and go about your day. However, our eyes, every time we celebrate Eucharist, y'all, we break bread, right? Our eyes should constantly be open for the signs of God and new life all around us. What a perfect time of year for this reminder. Spring has sprung. You may be sneezing, but the reminders of new life are literally all around us. In blooms and blossoms, the leaves on the trees. So let your eyes be open for God's work around us. And if you forget, start noticing that it's spring, where new life is physically everywhere. Thanks be to God that Jesus conquered death and came back, so that Jesus didn't have to be someone we wait for. Jesus is all around us and among us. Every time we break bread, it's just a reminder. We don't have to wait to break the bread to experience the love of God. We don't have to wait to hear the voice of Jesus saying our name like he did to Mary on that day of resurrection. Jesus is everywhere. And that, I think, is some really good and hopeful news for this broken world. Thanks be to God.